Ladies and gentlemen, saints and seekers, I came here today not just to speak, but to awaken something, because I need you to understand this ain't just a message, it's a movement. We live in a world that fears a certain kind of woman, not the loudest, not the richest, not the prettiest, but the one they can't quite define. I'm talking about the woman who doesn't wait for permission, who doesn't beg for validation, who doesn't crumble when she's counted out. I'm talking about the woman who walks alone and walks in purpose. Oh, she's been through hell, but she walks like heaven. She's been betrayed, but she carries truth. She's lost some people, but she found herself. And that is the kind of woman who shakes nations, because the most dangerous woman is not the one who shouts, not the one who fights, but the one who walks alone and knows exactly where she's going. Get ready, because tonight we're going to talk about her. She doesn't fear solitude. She finds power in it. You see, there's a difference between being lonely and being alone. The dangerous woman understands that. She doesn't need to be constantly surrounded, affirmed, or applauded to feel like she matters. She's not scrolling for likes or waiting for someone to call her valuable. She knows who she is in the quiet. In fact, it is in the silence where she grows the most. While others are distracted by noise, she's tuning in to a higher frequency. She's building herself in private so that when she steps into the light, she's not shaken by the opinions of men, because she was anchored in the presence of God long before anyone noticed her. While some run from solitude, she walks into it like a sanctuary, because that's where she meets her thoughts, her strength, her truth. That's where the refining happens. That's where the healing takes place. That's where she starts to understand the weight of her own voice, the depth of her own dreams, and the magnitude of her mission. She's not waiting on a crowd to clap before she moves. She moves because she's called. She moves because she's convicted. She moves because she knows that being alone doesn't mean being abandoned. It means being aligned. You see, a woman like that is dangerous because she doesn't crumble when people leave. She doesn't fall apart when the room gets empty. In fact, she becomes more focused, more intentional, more powerful. She's not moved by flattery or shaken by silence. Her validation doesn't come from the outside. It was birthed on the inside. She's battled in secret. She's cried in the dark. She's faced fears that would paralyze the average soul. And she came out not bitter, but bolder, not weaker, but wiser, because solitude didn't break her, it built her. When a woman stops fearing loneliness and starts embracing it, she becomes a force this world cannot manipulate. She's no longer a prisoner to relationships that drain her or environments that shrink her. She no longer tolerates crumbs because she knows she brings the feast. And when she walks alone, she walks with confidence, not because she's never been hurt, but because she survived every wound and still kept walking. That's the kind of woman who's a threat. That's the kind of woman who shakes rooms just by entering them, not because she's loud, but because she's whole. Her identity is not defined by others, but forged in silence. She doesn't wait for someone to name her, claim her or frame her worth. She understands that people will project their insecurities, their fears, and their limitations onto her. But she refuses to wear labels that don't fit the woman she knows she's becoming. This kind of woman has done the inner work. She has wrestled with her own reflection until she saw not just what life did to her, but what purpose was trying to do through her. In the silence, she learned to strip away the masks, the titles, the expectations that tried to mold her into something less than divine. She's not the product of popular opinion. She's not shaped by applause, nor is she shaken by absence. She has outgrown the need to be understood by everybody because she finally understands herself. While others build their worth on likes, status, or relationships, she dug deep into the unseen, the sacred, and the still. She stopped performing and started becoming. And in the stillness of that sacred space, she heard the whisper of her own calling rise above the noise, other people's opinions. That's where her identity was forged, not handed down, but pulled from the fire of her own becoming. She's been underestimated, mislabeled, overlooked, and misunderstood. But instead of being broken by it, she used it. Every rejection was a redirection. Every betrayal became a lesson. Every season of isolation taught her that value doesn't come from being chosen by man, but from being set apart by God. So now, when she enters a room, she doesn't shrink to fit. She expands to fill. She walks in her truth with grace and grit because she knows who she is, even if no one else claps for her. And this is what makes her dangerous. She cannot be manipulated by the fear of losing people or things, because what she's built in silence, the world can't take away. Her identity was forged in the fire of prayer, persistence, and pain. She became who she is through trial, not through trend. She was molded in midnight hours when nobody was watching, and now she moves in the daylight with power. She no longer needs a mirror to tell her she's enough. She became the mirror reflecting strength, resilience, and vision to every woman who sees her walk. She walks away from what doesn't serve her purpose, not out of arrogance, not out of pride, but out of clarity. Because when a woman knows her purpose, she also learns how to protect it. She no longer entertains things that drain her spirit, confuse her vision, or compromise her standards. She's not in the business of begging. She's not pleading for a seat at tables where she's only tolerated. She's building her own table, carving it out of conviction, setting it with peace, and filling it with people who recognize her value without her needing to shrink for it. This woman understands that everything connected to her life must either align with her assignment or get out of the way. She's not bitter. She's just boundary. She doesn't curse what she left behind. She blesses it and keeps walking because she knows that dead weight will slow her down, and distractions, no matter how sweet, can still be dangerous. There was a time when she would hold on too long, trying to fix, trying to prove, trying to explain. But not anymore. Now she's learned the sacred art of release. She's learned that peace is more valuable than approval, and growth requires goodbye. She walks away from relationships that manipulate, from friendships that envy, from environments that suffocate her gift. and not because she doesn't care, but because she finally does. She cares enough to stop sacrificing her potential on the altar of other people's comfort. She's no longer interested in being nice, if it means being silent. She's not here to make everyone feel comfortable. She's here to walk in her calling. And when that calling requires separation, she doesn't fight it. She flows with it. This kind of woman is dangerous because she has nothing to prove. She's not staying where she's not growing. She's not giving her energy to things that don't feed her spirit. She doesn't fear walking away because she knows what she's walking toward. And that vision, that clarity, that courage, it threatens systems, people, and structures that were counting on her staying stuck. But she's not stuck. She's sent. She's sent to greater, sent to higher, sent to purpose. And because she knows where she's going, she refuses to be delayed by things that only want to distract. She walks away not in weakness, but in wisdom, not in anger, but in authority, because walking away is not quitting, it's choosing. And she chooses herself. She chooses destiny. She chooses God's voice over every opinion. That's what makes her powerful. That's what makes her unshakable. And that's what makes her a dangerous woman. She leads without needing to be followed. Her leadership is not rooted in ego, applause, or recognition. It's anchored in purpose. She doesn't move to impress. She moves because she's moved by something greater inside of her. She doesn't wait for a crowd to co-sign her next step. She takes it in faith with boldness, even when no one understands, because she knows real leadership isn't about being seen, it's about being sent. It's about being obedient to the call on her life, even when the room is empty, even when the road is lonely. She doesn't lead from a place of needing validation. She's not asking, will they come with me? She's asking, is this where I'm called to go? And if the answer is yes, she goes regardless. She doesn't need a following to prove she's worthy. She doesn't chase titles, positions, or popularity. She leads from the front when she must, from behind when she's called to, and in the shadows when purpose demands it, because for her, leadership isn't a platform. It's a posture. It's not about how high she can rise, but how deeply she can serve. And she leads because she's called to carry something forward, not because she wants to be carried. This woman is dangerous because she understands influence doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it's the quiet consistency, the steady hand, the unwavering presence that leaves the biggest mark. She doesn't have to announce herself. Her integrity speaks louder than words. People watch her, not because she demands attention, but because her life commands it. Her actions, her choices, her discipline, they all preach without a microphone. She leads by example, not by entitlement. And even when she's misunderstood, she keeps building, keeps rising, keeps pressing forward. Because she knows that leadership is lonely, but it's worth it. She's not afraid to stand alone, to make the hard decisions, to walk paths others fear to tread. And even when she doesn't have a blueprint, she follows the inner compass that God placed inside her. She's been through enough to know that being liked and being led are not the same thing. And she chooses to be led by purpose, not people-pleasing. She'll walk through fire if it means breaking generational curses. She'll say no to comfort if it means saying yes to calling. And whether they follow her or not, she walks like a leader, talks like a leader, lives like a leader. Because leadership to her is not an act, it's who she is. Her peace is her power, and her presence is a revolution. She's no longer chasing chaos or addicted to the drama that used to distract her. She's found a rhythm that the world can't interrupt, a stillness that can't be shaken. That peace wasn't handed to her, it was fought for. It was birthed in long nights, in heavy tears, in unanswered questions. She earned that calm through every storm she endured, and now it sits on her like armor. She walks into a room, and without saying a word, the atmosphere shifts. Not because she's loud, but because she's grounded. There is something holy about a woman who is no longer disturbed by noise. She doesn't panic when things don't go as planned. She doesn't spiral when people walk away. She's tasted too much of God's goodness to let temporary problems rob her of lasting peace. That's what makes her dangerous. She's untouchable in the places that used to break her. She's not thrown off by opinions, delays, or rejections, because her peace doesn't come from what's happening around her. It comes from what's been established within her. And when you find that kind of peace, you don't give it up easily. She doesn't argue to prove her worth. She doesn't perform to feel accepted. She doesn't shrink to make others comfortable. She simply is. And her being is enough. She's healed enough to know that peace is a priority, not a privilege. That guarding her energy is not selfish, it's strategic. And every time she chooses peace over panic, grace over gossip, wisdom over impulse, she becomes even more powerful, because it takes strength to be still. It takes maturity to not react. It takes spiritual authority to stand in silence and still win the war. Her presence is a revolution because she carries everything she fought for inside her. When she walks in, she brings legacy, she brings healing, she brings change. Not because she's trying to impress, but because she's living in alignment. People feel her presence not because she demands attention, but because she carries a weight that only comes from walking through fire and not smelling like smoke. That peace she carries, that's the evidence of her survival. That's the fruit of her growth. That's the sound of someone who refused to let the world break her spirit. So now, when she moves different. She doesn't run from conflict, but she doesn't invite it either. She chooses her battles with discernment and her words with intention. And when she decides to stay quiet, it's not weakness, it's wisdom. When she decides to leave, it's not fear, faith. Her peace gives her clarity, and her clarity gives her power. She doesn't need to be loud to be heard. Her stillness is louder than any scream. Her presence is not a performance. It's a declaration: I survived, I healed, and I refuse to be shaken again.